Hi everyone, and welcome back to another virtual field trip at Bethabara. In today's episode, we'll be discussing something a little different. As you might remember from the amphibian video a little while back, the Moravians understood the importance of the nature around them and went to great lengths to document the flora and fauna around Bethabara. This included exhaustive lists of the trees around Bethabara. In today's episode, we'll be going around the trails around Bethabara and talking about the tree life there.
Hi, I'm Caleb Brabel-Rose. I'm a graduate student at Wake Forest University here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I study plant ecophysiology, and today I'd like to tell you about some of the flora that you might find here at historic Bethabara. Historically, the forest that you would have seen during the early settling periods here at Bethabara would not have been so chock full of pines like this guy right here. You'd be seeing a lot more large hardwood trees like this oak, and that's because, judging by this forest, this was probably clear cut 50, 60, 70 years ago. There's a couple things you can tell. A lot of the hardwoods, such as this oak right here, are rather small, and also you don't see a lot of fallen pines all over the place. So you can tell that a lot of the pines that started growing here when it was cut are still alive. And especially in this part of the state, in North Carolina where we're at, you kind of move from a shrubby type of vegetation, and you get a lot of small pine trees, to a transitional pine forest state where you see a lot of pines about this size, where you see very, very few branches low down and a big tuft up at the top. And then you start getting your hardwood trees like your oaks and your maples and stuff like that move in afterwards. And right now I think we're seeing the transitional period between our pine trees like this and our big mature hardwood trees like this guy over here. So while you're hanging out in the woods with a plant physiologist, I figured it would be cool to kind of teach you how to ID some of the most common species that you'd find here in Western North Carolina and Central North Carolina. So first, we have the hickory tree. You can tell this is a hickory because it's got these big single lobe leaves that have a really, really strong venation on the back. That's gonna be a hickory. This is a baby maple, and you can maybe tell that you have three big lobes right here with two smaller lobes on the top lobe and one on the bottom. Think of Canada when you think of the maple leaf. Then there's the oak tree. The oak has has a big leaf like that with, this one has 7 big lobes on the side of it. Not to be confused with the sassafras, which only has 3. And then we have the beech tree, which has a bunch of little spines, not pokey spines, but they have these serrations on the edges of the leaf and a really, really sharp point here. That's a beech tree. And then we have the state tree of North Carolina, the dogwood. These are a big lobed leaf with a sharp point on the end, and they often don't grow as tall as a lot of these other big hardwood trees like this. Then we have some of the evergreens that you're going to find here in Central North Carolina. This is the leaf of a magnolia tree. The magnolias have these really, really big, beautiful blooms when they bloom, and they have these really thick, tough leaves that grow really, really big on a full adult-sized tree. You'll often see them be brown on the bottom, but this is a young tree, so it's not brown. Then you have a holly bush or a holly tree, and you can tell it's a holly because it hurts to try to pick. This one poked my hand when I picked it, and they have a really, really thick, tough leaf as well, and spines on every corner of the leaf. And then finally, I couldn't find a living one, but this is a pine branch, and you can tell it's a pine because it's covered in needles like that. And you'll have needles all over the trees, and obviously these don't drop during the fall like any other like all these hardwood trees that we have right here. But lest we forget seeing the forest for the trees, there are also a ton of other plants in here that aren't big, tall, mature trees. For instance, this fern is what we call a seedless vascular plant, which means it has the xylem and phloem that, you know, the big trees here are gonna have, but it doesn't have a true seed, it doesn't have flowers. And they grow here on the underbrush. They like moist, cool, wet places to hang out. They also like not being trampled, which is pretty important. They don't normally grow on the trails. And then you have all these around, which are also a seedless, non-vascular plant. So while I always encourage going out and getting close to nature, some nature is always best observed from a distance. This, for example, is poison ivy. You can tell it's poison ivy because it has these 3 kind of serrated leaves. And if you know anything about poison ivy, you know that it causes a very, very irritating rash. Some common home cures are to use any type of oil disintegrating detergent like a dish detergent or a hand soap that can break down the oils that actually cause the irritation on your skin. And if you know you already have the rash that starts to break out, a lot of people in this area like to use calamine lotion. So if you're looking to take a hike, be around nature, or check off some more plant species on your identification list, I think Bethabara is a great place to do it, especially in this area. You get all kinds of different species, the hiking is pretty cool, and you might learn something while you're out here.